Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So my next interview is with John Cassini, who is a young filmmaker who has made a brilliant and captivating and very compelling film about family, actually. It's a film called Kamala, and it's about drug trafficking. It's about cycles of violence and about how our family histories sometimes are revealed to us in very strange and interesting ways. It's about money and power. It's about how John talks very specifically about how intimate stories really can be universal stories. It's about the war on drugs, and it's about, as he says and articulates so well, it's about many versions of truth. He says that he wasn't really going to get only one truth, but he ended up with a variety of truths. I'll leave that for you, which leads nicely into this other thing that we discussed, which is, ambiguity in life appeals certainly to me as an existentialist. We talk about violence and how it continues on that cycle, as I mentioned earlier. We talk about expectations and about fulfilling them in the context of a family, and not justifying violence ever in an environment like this, but trying to understand it and how, and again, back to the ambiguities and many truths. John talks a great deal about how we shouldn't forget the shades of gray. And ultimately, really, this is a film about family. It's about the friends we choose and autonomy. And as he says so beautifully, a true friendship is with your family. And Kamala, interestingly enough, is really a film about learning how to love and to listen. John was wonderful in the interview. His film's premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival, and there he was sitting I believe in LA, sitting in the room on the call on the interview, and he was wearing a T-shirt that said "Be a nice human." So how cool is that? And he's currently in Toronto at the festival. By the time you listen to this, hopefully you'll be able to see the film somewhere online. Stay tuned to Face to find out more about where that's going to be, video on demand. I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to be hearing more about this film in the not so distant future. So coming right up shortly, Kamala with John Cassini. And don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my writing and my speaking. You can get there through that address, but you can also get there at facetofacelive.ca, which is where the podcast exists, but it's all under one umbrella now. Coming up on 600 interviews. We're getting so close. I've got quite a few in the library waiting to go live, and 9 or 10 more coming out of this Toronto International Film Festival that I'm currently involved in right now. Some pretty exciting films coming up around the corner. And don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter there. If you're watching us or listening to us on YouTube, please like the page, but also subscribe to the channel. That would help us a great deal. And then socially mediate us in any way that you can. Get us out on the street through Instagram and Twitter. Sign up for our newsletter. We don't send out too many. And check back often and listen to some of our old episodes. We got a huge library of value there for sure, for those of you who are into film and social change of one kind or another. So stay tuned, though. Coming right up. Oh, please, too, if you like what we're doing, leave us a review on iTunes. We would appreciate that. But right now, stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. Coming right up, Kamala with John Cassini. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by a very special guest here today. Hey, this is like a pre-Toronto International Film Festival interview. We have John Cassini here today to talk about his brilliant and beautiful and very personal new film, Kamala. Jean, thank you for joining me here today on Face to Face.
Thank you, David, for the invitation. I'm really excited to be part of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's going to get a little more exciting for you as you're heading to Toronto for the festival. Congratulations, and I'm so excited for you to see the film with other people and Q&As and all of that. How are you feeling about that?
I'm a little bit nervous, if I am honest, because I think that being in this festival, even though it is a great entrance for sure, but at the same time, you feel a certain commitment. So now it's going to be the first screening. It's going to be the first time an audience is going to watch the final film. And also, it's like, I'm very curious about how people is going to react, because even though I have a sense that the film can be quite universal, I think that it's going to be, I mean, it doesn't stop to being a different context from which people in Canada are living. So I'm curious about how they're going to react, how they're going to relate to the film. And so that makes me a little bit nervous. And also it's because it's my first time in Canada. I have never been there, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
well,
be
that's
traveling there by myself. So it's like always like, oh, how am I gonna move through the city? And it's like,
sure, sure. Well, I have no idea where you're staying, but I've spent a fair bit of time in that city and in Toronto, and grew up in just outside of the city, and it's beautiful, and I think I'm pretty sure you're going to be welcome with open arms. And hey, listen, I love how you say that your story. By the way, congratulations on the film. It's it's beautiful. It's intimate. It's compelling. It's a story that needs to be seen, I think, by every parent, by every Catholic priest, by every school teacher. Like there is a universal thread to this. John, tell me, why did you decide to put this on film? I think is maybe for me the one of the most important questions, because it's so personal, so intimate, and you reveal so much.
sure. I think I'm gonna part from this statement where I believe that the intimate can be universal and can be political at the same point. And going back to the context, when I started the film, it was at the end. It was at the middle of 2012, and we as Mexicans, we we had some time, some years, like let's say like 4 years, living every day this abrupt violence that took out so many lives, that disappeared so many people, and that you can still hear back then and even nowadays all the consequences that the war against narcotraffic brought. So when I reencounter with my family in that year, after 5 years of not seeing them, and in the middle of those years my dad was killed, it was something huge for me, like to recognize in each one of them these root problems that among our intellectual friends we used to discuss through those years, where we said like, the government is like not really attacking the root problems. What they are trying to solve with the army intervention is like the ground beneath, but not the root. So when I encounter myself with my family, I so clearly part of those root problems. And I thought, like, I think that if I tell this story from this perspective, it's going to allow to people to connect more, because it's not going to be seen as an event or a situation that it's like strong and it has an impact, but it's going to be seen as something that can happen to everyone. And and that for me was like really compelling, and I felt like I saw a great chance to highlight also these root problems, and not only focus on the violence and the fightings that they were strong enough for sure, but they were making us forget the real issues. So that's why I wanted to make it.
John, I love how you talk about there's a line I think where you are narrating, and I love too. I want to say well done on your narration, because your narration just really is. Again, I've used the word compelling already, but it really drew me in and reminded me of some great documentaries over the years that are so personal. These personal road movies. almost, right? And that's kind of what Kamala really is, or at least it is to me. But you say the line was, I think, if you could find his story, I'll find the root of his pattern, and then I can cut it. I believe was your line. Can you talk a little bit about that without maybe giving away the story that people are going to see in the film? And even if you want to give away the story, go right ahead, because I think this film is worth watching more than once. So even if you do know the story, it's worth going back to.
Thank you. Well, I think it was important to me to give this term of finding the root, because also most of my family, and in my case myself, we didn't knew, sorry, our backgrounds. We didn't knew where we came from as family, as members of a family. No, I mean, because our family was, or well, it is still divided, and there were so many secrets and so many lies. And so obviously you keep wondering, like, well, in universal questions, where do I come from, who
Right.
am I? And you feel this necessity of knowing those aspects of your past or your family past, to be aware of where are you nowadays. So for me that was like saying this is the root. But then, if I am allowed to say as well, I think that at the end, something that I learned through this journey and through trying to find that root is that you're never going to find it.
Mm,
The truth is that, yeah, because at some point you put a face to that root. That's something that I do, or the film does, through the while it's happening, no. But then you discover it, or we find this character that we tend to identify as the root, but then you see that it's not the root at the end. I mean, and that you're never gonna be able to really find it, because, and at the end, maybe it's not, I mean, it is important for sure, the knowledge, and to have it, and all these things that you discover, but at the end, what's most important is what you do with the knowledge.
right.
So yes, definitely. I mean, my sister put it in a better words. She said, like, to know who you are, you need to find and know the stories of the people who were in the past. So yeah, definitely.
Was it essential to you that what we as an audience get to see is as true of a representation of your past and your father's past and the people around him as possible? In other words, were there times, I suppose, you talk about secrets and lies, and it comes out in the film in a really interesting and super political and fascinating way. But did you ever get a sense that you weren't actually being told the truth, by some of your family members, that they were just creating more stories around story in order to maybe, oh, I don't know, perform for the camera or perform for you, to let you down more easily? Does that make sense? Yeah.
So yeah, it makes a whole sense. I never thought that they were performing for me or for my camera for the film. But one of the things that I also learned, and it also was like a challenge to go through the film, is that I realized that I was not gonna get one truth. I was gonna get many.
That's so
And
good.
yeah, and it was like, you want to be objective, because you also want to construct an objective narrative. So you think, like, how am I gonna solve this, because I am getting so many versions of the truth. And also, I realized that for me, and nowadays for everyone, is really comfortable to adapt a position about something. And something that I also learned, that I was constantly fighting when I was hearing all these truths and versions, it was that I always, when I arrived to an idea, when I was like, oh, this is like this, and of course I understand it, and that's why she's doing this or he's doing that or reacting to that, and And then I heard another version that came and throw the aspect that I already thought that I knew. And
Right.
it was like, I don't know nothing, you know, I know nothing.
So
So
is that how you stepped into the story too? Like, I mean, you give me the sense that you were really, you were carrying a notebook and you were, taking notes and you were discovering, these things as you went. You probably knew a fair bit going in, but you struck me as a bit of a detective as well, right? Taking on some fairly, I would think, some big unknowns. Uh,
yeah, definitely. Well, I never carry it. I never carried my a diary or something. I think that it's linked to the previous question. What I did, it was I get to a point in where I finally said, like, I can't make an impression of each one of the characters or each one of their stories. What I'm just can do is sit and listen them,
mm,
and to try to put them together, um, according to each episode, or to each episode of my father's life story. Um and just trying a little bit objective to just put on their place, put on their shoes, and say, like, well, he or she was more close to him in this point of his life. I don't know if it's what he's saying is like the real truth, but I'm gonna go for it. I mean, like the case of my grandfather, who has a strong personality, who has an incredible story, uh, that even though nowadays, even though it is put in this film with all this footage, historical footage, all of us tend to question, like, if it is true, it is true. That's why there is this intervention from the other character who say,
mm.
like, I don't think it's true. It's like, well, we are allowed to ask ourselves if it is true or not. Yes, I think I would like to add that I like in cinema this ambiguity. I like this
Sure.
idea of not giving you the whole information. I wouldn't like to say the whole truth, because I mean, I like to feel in cinema that what I am watching, it's true, or it's true to me. But I do like this ambiguity in information, and I think that it's something that the film allowed us to construct.
Absolutely. I would think, well, isn't real life full of ambiguity? Like, do any of us really know our own personal stories? If we all took a camera and went into our past and looked for different people, I mean, I wonder, to what degree is it really even all that important? But we still need to have, it seems to me, some kind of, I don't know, representation or understanding of where we've come from. I mean, that comes out beautifully. And I think, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but now I think we're talking about what's really important, and that's the root. We're back to that root problem. Why the cycle of violence? Why are women treated the way they are in any culture, not just this one, and so on? Jean, did you ever, you opened the film up with your mom kind of in a bit of a space of denial, it seems. Were you there when you started to film, when you started to ask some of these questions? Was there a part of you that said, I don't want to believe what I'm hearing about my father. I don't want to hear these stories. Or did you have a pretty good idea of what you were going to find out?
I had an idea of what I was going to face too, but it's interesting that you say, because even yesterday I was reflecting on how different it is, and of course, common sense points that it was going to be like that. But when you imagine something, and maybe when you go through that in at the time, maybe it's not that different from what you imagine, but the fact of being living it, it's so strong. And when I started, I knew things that I was going to face too. I mean, I had an idea, this sense of hit my father was something that I was aware when I started. But I remember that one of the points that it happened near the beginning of the shooting, when I truly faced myself through hearing uh, what he did and how he did it, was something so strong for me. Um, and I actually thought about, like, I don't know if I really want to go, if I want to go for more, because at some point I thought that I wanted to, how can I say it? To explain, I wanted to sympathize with my father as a human being. And
Sure.
then by facing this, it was like it makes her more difficult.
Well, John, I love what you say about sympathy because and empathy really too, because I love at the point in that film, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, but you were wondering, you were looking at a photo, and you wondered, I'm just trying to look, would my father have fired these 8 shots? You ask yourself that question in in the film, and I wonder to what degree you were hoping that we were all asking ourselves the same question. Right? Does that make sense? Like the empathy that I felt for you at that point in the film, as you were reflecting on your father and his life, and some of the horrible things that he took part in. I wondered if you were asking yourself that same question, and if I was then, I mean, I found myself saying, how would I have behaved? Could I have worn the same shoes that this man did too? Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that translates well or not,
No, no, no,
but
no. I mean, yeah, yeah, definitely. But what I'm trying to think is, but the question it is, what would you say that is like the main question?
were you, when you said to yourself about your father, would he have fired those 8 shots? Would he have killed that young boy as well? Were you really asking yourself that question as well? Do I have the
Yeah,
ability, right? And now we're back to patterns and so on.
definitely. No, yeah, yeah. I think that moment came when I hear the situation that I say, I mean, there's a part. I mean, I'm gonna spoil it, but I mean, it's not really a spoil. When my sister is the one who confirms that, no, and the way she said the things, that that was so strong. And and also, I mean, when you, I was, as I said, well, I'm gonna be a little bit back. When we received this abroad violence through those years, it was like it opened our eyes to what it was happening around. I mean, not only about you. And I think that at some point, by doing the film, because it is so intimate and it's a story about family, well, you tend to focus on what happened inside your family. But then I was constantly hearing news about journalists who were killed in
Right.
Mexico. And I remember that case in particular that I mentioned in the film, that it was this woman journalist who was shot in front of her kid. And that created an impact because I was editing the film in that moment. And it was so strong because I thought, like, well, as I said, like, as you mentioned, it's like, should my father have done this if he had the chance? And for me, that was something so strong to ask, because there's some kind of violence, or there's some kind of events that you recognize that there are in the film, but going to this other point where you feel what I feel, that it's like something so strong to take a position like that. So I think it's impossible not to ask yourself, when you are seeing every day this kind of violence. I would like to add, about violence. There's a part where my grandfather mentioned that when you kill someone, it's because you are out of your mind. I mean, he related to some mental issue
Sure.
or sanity. And even though that I don't reflect on that inside the film, I think I tend to personally ask myself, like, is that true? I don't think so. Because, I mean, especially in Mexico, I mean, I hear about women being killed in horrible ways every day and people disappearing every day. And so I think the violence and killing is something that we have. I mean, I cannot say, I wouldn't say like everybody, but that it seems like most of us could do that without any remorse or any reflection, because it's happening and we're seeing it. So I don't, and people continue with their lives or try to hide or try to run away. But it's like, wouldn't you feel? It's suppose that you feel like bad with that, that you maybe that you don't even have the force to run away or to try to set a normal life. I mean, how can someone set a normal life after those actions is something that I'm wondering. But that makes me think that you don't have to be insane really
Right.
to murder someone.
We like, I think my take is that we like to explain violence and evil and those type of horrors away in some way. Like we can sort of rationalize it by saying, oh, well, that was psychosis, or that person
Yeah.
was completely mad, and therefore they created, they committed these atrocities or these crimes. And I think you're right. I think your film is a really fascinating exploration of evil and how easily these types of things can take hold of people in such a um, kind of a simple way, right? In a almost understated way. And I think that sort of leads to my next question. I think is your uncle Descartes. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
Yes, fascinating guy. And he talked about getting involved in this narcos like world. What was the quote? Not for money, but for the thrill. Not for money, but for the thrill.
For the thrill.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
so is that what pulls people in? Do you believe that's what pulled your father into this lifestyle? What I mean, your mother certainly implies that she didn't get rich off of his life of crime. But is it money? Is it power? Is it does it just sort of happen, or is it back to the root and back to the pattern?
As I was saying, I think that it's an amount of things that I mainly will direct to his personal necessities. I think that, and it feels weird to affirm the reasons because at the end I'm never gonna know.
Right. Right.
Um, but I tend to think that it is because he wanted some kind of validation for himself, and I think that because of the environment where he lived with his uncles, with his family, um, he felt that that kind of validation was the one that gonna make him feel fulfilled. Um, I think that I don't know that yeah, I think that it was the environment around him, the one that fulfilled his expectations, the ones that make him like aspire. Where did he want to become, or where did he want to be? And also because he saw that this kind of environment, like, yeah, it brings you power in a sense. And what is power for him? Power was having money and getting many women. So I think it is like that, and I think that he, with over time, he started to ambition more when maybe that concept of power was changing through the years. I am not sure if it was changing because I mean, you hear stories about, especially in this part of Sinaloa. I don't know if you have heard of it, but the state of Sinaloa inside of Mexico, we can say that it was like the creek of narco traffic in Mexico
Mm,
during I think it was through the 70s. So, well, my father lived there through those years. So I think that even being a hitman back then was something that was currently happened. But I think that there was a boom, of course, when the war against narco traffic started in 2006. So I think that's why I said, like, well, this concept of power change through the time. So I think that he wanted to maintain himself in fulfilling his expectations of what power consists. And
Well, you said, you know,
I think that that was because I I think, and I don't, and it's not that I want to be cruel or that I want to be resented or sound resented, but I think that for him that was more important than the fact of showing himself like a good parent, like a good husband, like or a good son. But I mean, some of members of my family tend to see him nowadays like that, like he was a good son. He was, well, no, nobody can say that he was a good husband. Uh, and some of them tried to think that in some points they tried to see the good on him as a father. Maybe me, maybe including myself. I mean, I could say that at some point he was lovable, but right now I'm truly like disconnected of him. But I
you're
can say
right.
that he was kind of charming in some ways.
Right, right. Yeah, I would imagine, and I mean, I think most of us at certain points in our lives are lovable. I think you're right. I think that's true. You know, Jean, I love what you said about you feel like his personal necessities, his need for validation, and I wonder, is that part of the pattern? Is that part of the root that you're talking about? So here's Jimmy who wants to be loved, who wants to be included. He wants to be embraced by his community, by his family, by his friends. And this was the way he filled that. Is that what you're kind of trying to get at with Kamala, with this film? That you want us to be asking some of those questions about education? What did Uncle Dacre say, or Dacre say? I didn't invest in my future.
Yeah,
Right? Right?
exactly. Yeah, I think I don't want to people to ask in particular about my dad because I think I took a position inside the film about my dad, and it was, well, no, I don't want to. Well, yeah, I don't know. Should I spoil? I mean, it's not like a turn or it's not like a revealing. I don't know. But
Right. Not a big reveal. Yep.
no, but I think my position is like I'm standing with the people that he hurt, and I'm not saying about the people that the families that of his victims or something like that. No, I'm not saying that. Maybe if I know them, maybe I will stand for them as well. But I stand for other kind of victims that are the women that get to know him, that he get along. Um, so that's my position. But if I want to people feel that they understood him, or they can, um, sorry, what could be the word in English? Um, yeah, there's another word, but I think that understanding why he ended
Sure.
up like that. I mean, yes, I want to them to understand, but I wouldn't like to justify. I wouldn't like to people to justify the actions that he took at the end, because for me, I think, I mean, me talking as a son of as his son, I think and thought that he took these decisions by himself, and so he's responsible for his
Right.
actions. But I do want that the audience who see this film and who recognize themselves living these situations with their kids, and when they feel that they're in a point when they can do something to prevent that their kids follow that way of violence, that's what I want. um, I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like people to justify my dad. Uh, Definitely.
I think I know exactly what you mean, John. You want people to understand it. You would like people, I think, to empathize with it, but not to ever glorify it, not to ever say, "Oh, this was okay." There's that really interesting moment. I think it's Uncle Dacre again who talks about how the narcos industry helps to build buildings and they create jobs and electricians and and I guess there's a lot of truth in that, right? I mean that's sort of the darker side, I suppose, of capitalism in some respects, but never to justify that, to understand it, but to not justify it. You know, you end the film so beautifully with that very personal letter with your mom, and it's just it's a warm and loving and heartbreaking scene. Is Would you say Kamala is it about home? Is it about community? Is it about that sense of love from a mother to her son? I mean, this film's a beautiful love letter. It just hit me. This film's a beautiful love letter. And then there you are ending the film with the letter. There's not really a question in there, John, but I just, well, there is, I guess. It's embedded.
I think, well, for me, the film it's about autonomy. That's what that has brought to me, um, and that's what I think also that's my wish as well for each member of my family who are part of this film. Another person asked me if some members of my family had watched the film and what was the reaction. The main question that remained for me was like, do they make you closer? Do they make you feel apart?
Sure.
And I was reflecting on that with another member of my family last night, and I realized like answer is that kind of questions is like to just think in terms of white and black, and we are forgetting all the shades. And I
Sure.
forgot because obviously my wish, my personal wish, it is like, yes, please, I hope that this film can uh, bring us together and forget about all these geographical and emotional divisions. But the truth is, I mean, by being realistic, is that that's not going to happen. It's sad, but it's the truth. But what it's able the film to give us is this knowledge of to objectize our past, to watch it in less than 2 hours and recognize the patterns that had hurt us through our lives, and to now say like, where do I want to go from here? That's what I'm hoping. And maybe that will not include that, oh, I need to be more close of this other member of the family. Perhaps between some of them they will, perhaps between someone of them they won't. I tend to think that they won't. But for me also gave me this autonomy of saying, well, now I know where I come from. And that allows me also to know who I am. But also more important, it's what is my place
Mm.
inside this family. And yeah, and for me that's really important. I remember one, and I think, I mean, I'm going to try to finish this.
No, it's good. It's good.
I remember that once I was having a drink with a friend in a bar, and then a guy approached to us, and he started talking to us, and we were told him like, "Oh yeah, we both are working in documentary filmmaking." And then he mentioned like, "Oh, but you seems like two closest friends. Do you value so much your friendship?" And I don't know if I was a little bit drunk, but my answer to him surprised me so much, and I believe it even nowadays. Where I told him like, yes, I value my friendships. I mean, friends are denominated, are called like family that one chooses, right? But I think that for me, it's more important nowadays when you establish a friendship, a true friendship with your family. because unfortunately your family, well, you don't choose them, and you have to learn how to stand them, even know that you can be so different. And for me, that has been a lesson about how you get to love someone. Because I mean, in
Mm.
personal relationships, I don't have that patience. If I don't feel connected, if I feel so different to someone else, I tend to go. And with my family, I don't go. I stay, even though that we are so different. And for me, that's beautiful. I mean, I was so surprised when I told him that, because I felt like, where did I came from? Where did this
Right.
come from? But it is true. I think I feel more proud to say that my family are my friends.
It's a you know what, John, it's a beautiful way to unfortunately end our interview and our conversation today. And I just want to say again how thrilled I am. I've seen the film, and I'm so thrilled that you've made it. And you know, I hope we bump cross paths together in Toronto in the next few days as you come in. And I am pretty sure audiences are going to receive your film well. I love how this film about the drug trade, and about how this film about violence and about politics and about the past is really ultimately about family. And I mean, that is just such a beautiful thing, and how your family is dealing with its history and with its trauma and all of these things. And ultimately, the way you end the film. Oh, by the way, I have to tell you, one of my favorite scenes is when you're with your mom eating. Was it cake? You're eating carrot cake or something in the coffee in a coffee shop, and
Yeah,
you're just having that beautiful, very open, transparent conversation. And for me, that was it's just such a beautiful moment, and you know, worth the price of admission to see your film. So again, thank you for your time, and what a pleasure meeting you here today. I'm so glad you've joined us on Face to Face. What's next for you after TIFF? More festivals?
yeah. We are going to
Amazing.
have our premiere in Mexico during October.
Awesome. That's amazing. What a pleasure having you on the show today, Jean. Thank you. We've been talking with John Cassini about his beautiful, compelling, and moving new film, Kamala. Thanks for your time today, Jean.
Thank you for the invitation, David. I enjoy your conversation.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with John Cassini on Face to Face, talking about his new film that premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival called Kamala. Look for it on video on demand, coming soon to a theater near you, I hope and trust, certainly a digital one. And keep your eye out and your ear out for it. I think you're going to be hearing more about the film and about Jean as well. We talked about so many things. We covered a lot of ground, and ultimately when we wound up with, you know, being a nice human being, we wound up with family and friendship and loyalty and love. And that is a pretty good place to be, it seems to me. Don't forget David Peck Live for more information about my speaking, my writing, facetofacelive.ca to find out the library of podcasts we have there. Please, if you're listening to us on YouTube, subscribe to the page, like us there. Please leave a review for us on iTunes. We sure would appreciate that. And subscribe for the podcast wherever you listen. That would be a huge help to us as well. Sign up for our newsletter on facetofacelive.ca. We don't send out too many of those. And last but not least, please socially, mediate us when you can. Send us out on Instagram and Twitter. Like us where you can. And thanks for the support and for listening to Face to Face.